You and me, we was meant to be.
The closed captions at the end of the trailer read, "You're surrounded." And Rue just stops running. She's in a hallway, alone. Her injuries are healing. Her face has that specific kind of exhaustion that isn't about being tired. It's about being done. Done running, done hiding, done fighting a war on every front simultaneously. For 3 seasons, Rue Bennett has been sprinting away from everything. Her addiction, her grief, her guilt, the people who love her, the people who want to use her, herself. And in the final seconds of the Season 3 finale trailer, she appears to stop. Whether that's surrender or acceptance or something in between, that's what this breakdown is going to figure out. In God We Trust. That's the title of Episode 8, the Euphoria Season 3 finale. And it's not a random phrase pulled from a coin. It's the thesis of everything this season has been building toward. Religion and faith have been running underneath this entire season like a current. The question of whether there is any power larger than the chaos you're in. Whether letting go, truly letting go, not as defeat, but as an act of trust, is something a person like Rue is even capable of. This trailer is answering that question, loudly and with a lot of police helicopters. We've got a DEA raid, a high-speed chase, Lori putting the pieces together, Alamo going down guns blazing in the way that was always going to happen. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, Maddy and Cassie, former best friends turned strangers, sharing a look that might be the most important relationship moment of the season. Plus, a wild Jules theory that I've been sitting with since I watched this trailer 3 times in a row. And if it's right, it's one of the most quietly devastating things the show has ever done. There's a lot here. Let's go through all of it. The trailer opens on sound before image. Lori's animals screaming and barking in the background. And then, Lori turning in her chair, delivering the line with her specific, terrifying calm. They know something that we don't. If you've been paying attention to Lori all season, you understand why this moment is so chilling. She doesn't panic. She observes. She processes. And the animals, which have always functioned in the show as a kind of environmental alarm system, picking up on disruptions in the energy of a space, are telling her something has changed. What changed is Rue. And what Rue did. Faye's betrayal has been processed. The aftermath of Episode 7 is sitting in Lori's mind, and she's running calculations. Rue swore she was on their side. Hours later, she was inside Wayne's safe, stealing Alamo's stash. And not just stealing it, doing it while Lori's crew had their guard down because they thought they had Rue's loyalty. For a woman who operates entirely on control and information, that's not just a betrayal. That's a demonstration that someone ran a successful play against her, that someone was smarter than she assumed. The terrifying thing about Lori isn't what she does when she's angry. It's what she does when she's calm and certain. And in this shot, she looks calm. Alamo is actively compromising their cartel connections in Mexico. Rue was the bridge Lori tried to use, and it just collapsed on her. The question isn't whether she retaliates. The question is how she calculates the most efficient path to protecting her operation, and whether Rue is more valuable as an asset, a message, or an acceptable loss. There's a scene in the trailer between Rue and Allie that looks quiet, deliberately quiet, set against the chaos surrounding everything else in the footage. Rue asks how people can be genuinely evil. Allie says it simply, it's human nature. We are all inherently selfish. It's a hard answer, not comforting, not the kind of thing you say to make someone feel better. But it's honest in the way Allie has always been honest with Rue, which is why their dynamic works. He doesn't give her what she wants. He gives her what's true. Now look at Rue's hand in this shot. It's wrapped in duct tape, exactly where Wayne cut her in Episode 7. That specific detail is doing 2 things at once. It's confirming continuity. Rue escaped from Lori's situation, either on her own terms or because someone pulled her out. And it's establishing timing. The wound is present but being managed. This isn't immediately after the escape. Some time has passed. Here's the theory that's been circulating in the fan community and has genuine support in the visual evidence. Given how relatively calm, both Rue and Allie look in this scene, this might not be happening in the middle of the episode's chaos. This might be closer to the end, an epilogue-adjacent conversation, sitting in the aftermath of whatever the finale does to everyone around them. If that's the case, then the structure of the episode is going to feel like a war film, 60 minutes of escalating chaos, and then a quiet final stretch where you take account of who made it and what's left of them. This is the moment in the trailer that hit me hardest, and I want to give it the attention it deserves. Maddy and Cassie, both of them completely disheveled, smeared makeup, the specific kind of destroyed appearance that comes from crying for hours, not sleeping, and surviving something that should have broken you. Based on the visual context, this is the morning after Nate's death, after the immediate chaos of episode 7 has passed, and the reality of what's happened has had time to settle. They're looking at each other, and Cassie smirks, not laughing, not making light of anything, a smirk that carries 5 years of complicated history, the friendship, the betrayal, Nate, everything, and something that feels like recognition, like arriving at the other side of something impossible, and realizing the person standing next to you made it too. Cassie and Maddy have been one of the most emotionally loaded relationships in the show since season 1, not just because of what Nate did to both of them, separately and in sequence, but because they genuinely loved each other in the way teenage girls sometimes love each other, completely, fiercely, without the vocabulary to call it what it was, poisoned by jealousy and a boy and the specific cruelty of watching someone you love choose something that hurts you. With Nate dead, that poison is gone, and what's left, if the smirk means what I think it means, is the original thing. Two people who went through hell and found each other on the other side of it. The show doing that for these two characters would be quietly, devastatingly earned. Jules has been largely sidelined this season in terms of plot mechanics. She's been in Ellis's apartment painting, removed from the cartel storyline, removed from the main action, which has frustrated some viewers who wanted her more integrated into the chaos. But I think the show knows exactly what it's doing with her isolation, and the finale trailer gives us a glimpse of what that pays off as. We see Jules in the apartment, crying, painting something we can't quite see, visibly devastated. The obvious reading is that she's processing grief over Ellis, whose storyline didn't develop into quite the central presence the season seemed to be positioning early on. Unrequited love, distance, the usual emotional territory. But here's the theory I can't stop thinking about. Rue, earlier this season, mentioned the idea of them having a family together someday, a future. The kind of domestic fantasy you hold on to when the present is too painful to live in without something to project toward. What if Jules is painting that? What if she's painting the future Rue described? The house, the family, the ordinary life, because she's just learned that it's no longer possible. Because Rue is going to prison, or something worse has happened. And the only version of that future Jules has left is the one she can put on a canvas. A woman painting the future she was promised in the same moment that future is being definitively taken from her. That's not just sad. That's the kind of grief that doesn't have a direct outlet, so it goes into art, which is also the most Jules thing imaginable. If the show does this, if that painting is revealed to be exactly that, it's one of the most quietly devastating images Euphoria has ever produced. And this show has set a very high bar for quietly devastating. The back half of the trailer is pure adrenaline. Let's map out what's happening. G hands off a weapon at the Silver Slipper, which suggests that even the peripheral characters are arming up for what's coming, meaning the Silver Slipper itself is going to be a location where something significant happens, not just a meeting point, a battleground. The high-speed chase sequence, a truck in pursuit, someone on a horse, the visual shorthand for Alamo, who has always carried that cowboy mythology deliberately, and Rue being shoved to the ground holding a white bag. The most logical reading of this sequence is that Rue is trying to return Alamo's stolen stash, completing the task that was supposed to be her exit from this situation. But something has gone wrong. Either Alamo knows about Maddy claiming to be DEA, or Lori's crew has caught up with her, or the DEA has beaten everyone to the scene. Kitty counting down, 3 Mississippi, police swarming Alamo's ranch simultaneously with the Silver Slipper. The operations are being shut down at multiple locations simultaneously, which means this is a coordinated federal action rather than a local bust. Someone, probably connected to the DEA deal Rue thought she had, pulled the trigger on the takedown. The snake shot. This is either atmospheric symbolism or the show reminding you that there was a snake attack earlier this season for a reason. In Euphoria's visual grammar, nothing gets a callback without being used again. Keep the snake in mind. Bishop in what appears to be Mexico, completely absent from episode 7, and now surfacing in the finale, presumably doing exactly what Alamo sent him south to do, disrupting Lori's cartel connections, sabotaging the supply line from the other end. Whether Bishop comes back from that mission, whether he becomes collateral damage, or whether he becomes the most dangerous loose end in the finale's final minutes, any of those outcomes would be consistent with how the show has been positioning him. And then the checkpoint. Eddie in a truck. Armed police with industrial chainsaws tearing open a drug transport vehicle. The federal net has closed completely. The last image of the trailer, Rue walking slowly down a hallway. The closed captions, "You're surrounded." Her injuries are slightly more healed than they were in the alley scene, which places this temporally toward the very end of the episode. She's wearing the same hoodie as the alley conversation, which puts them in the same location, possibly Allie's apartment building. She doesn't run. Here's what's significant about that. The Rue we met in season 1 ran. The Rue of season 2 ran from everything. From Jules, from her sobriety, from the consequences of her choices, from the reality of what she was doing to herself and the people around her. Running was her primary mode of existing in the world. And now she stops. The title of this episode, In God We Trust, has been a thread running through the whole season. Allie, who has been Rue's most consistent moral and spiritual anchor, operates from a framework of surrender. Not defeat, not giving up, the specific spiritual act of releasing control to something larger than yourself. Accepting that you can't manage every outcome, can't outrun every consequence, can't protect yourself from everything through willpower and strategy alone. Rue has been trying to control everything this season. The deal, the information, the people around her, the chaos she's in, and it has not worked. None of it has worked. And in that hallway, surrounded by police, with nowhere left to run, and no more moves to make, she trusts. Not naively, not because everything is going to be fine, but because running is over, and something has to happen next, and she's choosing to walk toward it, rather than sprint away from it. That's growth for Rue. That's the most growth she's ever shown. Whether it leads to prison, which based on the season's trajectory is almost certainly where she ends up, or something more complicated, the act itself is the point. The surrender is the ending, not the outcome. Let's go through it rapidly, because the finale has an hour-and-a-half runtime, which is basically a movie, and a lot of threads to resolve. Rue survives, but she goes to prison. The trajectory of the season, the DEA involvement, the hallway surrender, it all points here. And there's something quietly right about Rue ending this chapter of her life in a place where the substances aren't accessible, and the chaos is managed by someone else. She carries on Allie's legacy from the inside, helping people, finding purpose in exactly the place that took everything else away. Jules and Lexi both survive. They're too removed from the cartel crossfire. Lexi gets her writing break. The apartment scene with the production board is setting up an epilogue moment where she finally steps out of Patty's shadow into something that's actually hers. Maddy and Cassie both make it. The smirk tells you this. They found each other again on the other side of everything Nate did to them. Nate being dead doesn't undo the damage, but it removes the obstacle that was keeping them from being honest with each other. Some version of their friendship survives this season. Alamo dies. This was always going to be how it ended. He's been coded as a man whose mythology is bigger than his survival instinct. He will go out exactly the way the cowboy mythology he performs demands. Loudly, defiantly, in a blaze that looks more like choice than defeat, even when it isn't. Lori survives but ends up federally indicted. Her crew doesn't. The people around her absorb the physical consequences, and she ends up in a courtroom rather than a morgue, which is somehow both the most realistic and most frustrating outcome for the most genuinely terrifying character the show has produced. Allie is the one that scares me most. The show has been giving him moments of warmth and specific, grounded wisdom all season. In television grammar, that's often set up. Bishop or Lori's crew targets Rue's mom. Allie protects her. And Allie, who has already survived more than most people, might not survive this. Not because the show is cruel, but because his arc has always been about what it looks like to choose someone else's safety over your own. He'd go out a hero, and the show would let him have that completely. HBO has been very deliberate about the language. Season finale, not series finale. The door is technically open. But look at where the careers are. Zendaya is one of the biggest stars on the planet. Sydney Sweeney is headlining her own projects. Hunter Schafer has been building a film career. Jacob Elordi is already gone. The practical reality of getting this specific group back into the same room for season 4 is genuinely complicated in a way that goes beyond creative decisions. The smart money, if Euphoria continues at all, is a soft reboot. New characters, new story, the same world, the same aesthetic language, the same unflinching commitment to depicting young people in crisis without looking away. A skin-style transition that honors what came before while building something new. But by calling it a season finale rather than a series finale, HBO is keeping the option alive. Whether they exercise that option depends on how this episode lands. If the finale closes every arc with real finality, if Rue's surrender is genuinely a full stop rather than a comma, the case for continuing gets harder to make. If it leaves a thread, just one carefully placed, deliberately unresolved thread, that's the tell. Euphoria has always been a show about the gap between who you are and who you're trying to become. About the specific pain of being young and not yet having the tools to handle what's happening to you. About addiction and love and grief and the way all three of those things can look identical from the inside. And Rue's journey through all of that, through 2 seasons of running and 1 season of a different kind of running, arrives at a hallway, at a slow walk, at a woman who is finally, exhaustively, terrifyingly, ready to stop. In God We Trust isn't about religion in the institutional sense. It's about the specific surrender that 12-step programs and spiritual traditions and genuinely wise people have been pointing toward for centuries. You cannot manage everything. You cannot outrun everything. At some point, you have to let what's coming come and trust that what's on the other side is survivable. Rue doesn't know if it's survivable. Neither do we. But she's walking toward it anyway. And after everything this show has put her through, after everything it's put us through watching her, that walk feels like the most honest, most earned, most quietly heroic thing Euphoria has ever shown us. Tell me your predictions in the comments. Does Allie make it? Is Jules painting what I think she's painting? And does this feel like a real ending to you? Or does Euphoria have one more chapter left in it? Because I genuinely don't know. And I think that uncertainty is exactly where the show wants us.